Who are you really? The person laughing with friends, lost in a moment of genuine connection, or the one adjusting your camera angle, waiting for the perfect shot to share online? Is it the person who moves through life offline, unfiltered, unscripted, or the one curating their highlights, crafting a story meant to impress strangers and friends alike? Now ask yourself this: what if the version of you online, the one shaped by every post, every caption, every like, isn't just a reflection of who you are, but something altogether different? What if it's a version sculpted not by your own decisions, but by invisible algorithms designed to keep you scrolling, clicking, and chasing validation? It's not just a wild theory. Over 50% of Gen Z openly admit they're living double lives, one in the physical world and another in the carefully curated, pixel-perfect realm of social media. But here's the unsettling question: which one is the real you? Every ad you see, every post you linger on, every share and comment, they all seem like your choices. But what if they're not? What if a machine, a silent system of algorithms, has been nudging you all along, shaping how you present yourself, how you think, even how you feel? This isn't just about your Instagram feed or your latest TikTok. It's about something far deeper: your identity. If the technology you use every day influences how you present yourself, how you see yourself, and even what you value, are you still the author of your story? Or has the narrative been quietly rewritten for you? As we dive into this digital rabbit hole, the answers may leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself. Stick around, because what you discover might just change how you see yourself, your choices, and the technology you can't seem to put down. For centuries, identity was a gradual evolution. It wasn't a sprint, it was a journey shaped by the family you were born into, the culture you grew up in, and the community that surrounded you. Identity grew from the roles you played, the stories you told, and the connections you nurtured. Who you were wasn't something you consciously constructed, it was something that emerged organically over time. But in the digital age, this process has been disrupted. Identity has become something you perform, project, and curate. The rise of social media has shifted the focus from who you are to how you appear. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat have turned identity into a product, a brand that's carefully built, optimized for engagement, and sold to an audience. Think about how identity worked before social media. It was shaped in quiet, personal moments. A deep conversation with a friend could change how you saw the world. A challenge you overcame could redefine what you believed you were capable of. Your identity was rooted in the tangible, the real, the experiences you lived and the values you developed. Today, identity feels more like a construction project with social media as the blueprint. It's a performance, played out on a global stage for followers and algorithms. Instead of being shaped by slow, meaningful interactions, identity is increasingly influenced by rapid surface-level feedback. The likes, shares, and comments you receive don't just measure your popularity. They act as a guide, subtly steering you towards certain behaviors, appearances, and personas. Consider this. Studies show that 91% of Americans aged 18 to 60 are concerned about the long-term effects of technology on their sense of self. And with good reason. These platforms don't just let us share our lives, they actively shape the parts of our lives we choose to share. Every time you post a photo or write a caption, you're not just expressing yourself, you're also responding to a system that rewards certain choices and suppresses others. It's a system that thrives on feedback loops. Here's how it works. You post something, a selfie, a vacation shot, a moment that feels significant. If it gets likes, comments, or shares, you feel validated. That positive reinforcement teaches you something. This type of content works. So you repeat it. Over time, you unconsciously start shaping your online persona around what gets the most engagement. The result? A blurred line between who you really are and who the platform encourages you to be. Your identity becomes less about authenticity and more about alignment with the algorithm. But the impact of this shift isn't just personal, it's cultural. Social media has rewritten the rules of identity for entire societies. In the past, traditions, communities, and values played a significant role in shaping who we were. These influences were slow-moving, deeply rooted, and often passed down through generations. Today, those rules are being dictated by the platforms we use. Social media determines what's seen, valued, and celebrated. It decides which trends thrive, which voices are amplified, and which stories are forgotten. The result is a world where identity is increasingly fragmented and curated, where the boundaries between the personal and the performative are harder and harder to define. Think of this in terms of a cultural shift. In the past, being yourself meant being true to your values, beliefs, and experiences. Today, being yourself often means being a version of yourself that performs well online. The focus has shifted from authenticity to visibility, from inner growth to external validation. This isn't just a minor adjustment, it's a fundamental change in how we think about who we are. When our choices are guided by algorithms and our self-worth is tied to likes and views, how much of our identity is truly ours? It's also worth considering how these changes affect our relationships. When we curate our lives for an audience, we often prioritize what looks good over what feels genuine. We filter out the struggles, the mundane and the messy realities of life, presenting only the highlights. This can create a distorted sense of connection, where even our closest relationships are mediated through the lens of performance. And here's the unsettling truth. This process isn't entirely in our control. The platforms we use are designed to nudge us in specific directions. They reward behaviors that generate engagement, and they discourage anything that doesn't align with their goals. Over time, these systems shape not just how we express ourselves, but how we see ourselves. So, what does this mean for authenticity? What does it mean to be yourself in a world where your identity is influenced, if not controlled, by technology? If the platforms we rely on are constantly guiding our choices, can we still claim to be the authors of our own stories? The shift from organic identity to curated identity isn't just a personal issue, it's a societal one. It forces us to ask difficult questions about who we are and who we want to be. Because in a world where identity is increasingly shaped by algorithms and metrics, the most important question might not be, who are you? But who's deciding that for you? Imagine you're about to post something, a photo, a video, even a quick story update. You pause, adjust the filter, rewrite the caption, and reconsider. Why? What's driving this instinct to perfect, polish, and perform? In the offline world, our identities shift naturally. You might speak one way with your best friends, another with colleagues, and yet another with family. These shifts are subtle and context-driven, a natural part of how we interact with the world. But online, this process becomes amplified. Every post, every comment, every photo feels like part of a larger performance. It's not just about being yourself anymore, it's about curating a version of yourself that's worthy of an audience. And in the world of social media, that audience isn't just your friends or family. It's everyone, everywhere, all the time. This creates a unique kind of pressure, to always be on, to always project the best, most exciting version of your life. And this pressure can be overwhelming. A study found that 70% of young adults feel compelled to portray their lives as more exciting or successful online than they truly are. Think about what that means. The majority of people using these platforms aren't just sharing, they're editing, omitting, and exaggerating. The moments we share aren't random. They're carefully chosen to fit a narrative. But here's the twist. The more we curate, the more we risk losing touch with who we actually are. When we highlight only the glamorous moments and hide the struggles, the mundane or the real, we start to believe in a version of ourselves that isn't authentic. Psychologists have a term for this: identity dissonance. It's the discomfort that arises when there's a gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be. Over time, this gap can create a profound sense of unease, a feeling that you're living a double life, torn between the online persona you've created and the real you. But why does this happen? Why do we feel so driven to curate our lives? Part of the answer lies in the design of social media itself. These platforms are built to keep us engaged, and they achieve this by exploiting one of our most basic psychological needs: validation. Every like, comment, and share acts as a tiny burst of approval, a signal that we're seen, valued, and accepted. But here's the catch. This validation isn't consistent. It's unpredictable. Sometimes a post blows up, sometimes it doesn't. And this unpredictability is what makes it so addictive. Psychologists call this variable reinforcement. It's the same principle that makes slot machines so hard to resist. You never know when the next hit of approval is coming, so you keep posting, keep scrolling, keep chasing that feeling. And when the validation stops, it can feel like a personal failure. A post that doesn't perform well isn't just disappointing, it's destabilizing. It makes us question not just what we shared, but who we are. Over time, this pursuit of online validation can have profound effects on our mental health. Studies have shown that people who spend the most time on social media are more likely to experience symptoms of anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. Why? Because their sense of self-worth becomes tied to their online performance. For some, this performance becomes all-consuming. The pursuit of likes and followers starts to dictate not just how they present themselves online, but how they see themselves offline. The online persona begins to feel more real than the person behind the screen. But the problem isn't just individual, it's systemic. Social media platforms actively encourage this behavior. They're designed to amplify posts that generate engagement and to suppress those that don't. This creates a feedback loop, where the content that gets rewarded shapes the content that gets created. Over time, the platforms aren't just reflecting our identities, they're actively shaping them. And here's the thing, the pressure to perform doesn't affect everyone equally. For marginalized groups, social media can be both a lifeline and a battleground. On one hand, these platforms provide spaces to share stories, challenge stereotypes, and build communities. On the other hand, the pressure to conform to online norms can feel even more intense. Think about beauty standards. Filters, editing tools, and algorithms have created a homogenized aesthetic, one that's often unattainable. The pressure to meet these standards can be crushing, especially for younger users. A single photo, taken without a filter, can feel like an act of rebellion against a system that constantly tells you you're not enough. And yet, for all its flaws, the performative nature of social media isn't entirely negative. For some, it provides a space to explore and express aspects of their identity they might suppress in real life. A shy teenager might use Instagram to share their art. A person questioning their gender might find community on TikTok. In these moments, the performance becomes a form of self-discovery, a way to try on new identities and see what fits. The challenge is finding balance. How do we use social media as a tool for self-expression without letting it dictate who we are? How do we navigate the performative pressures of the online world without losing touch with our offline selves? Because at the heart of this tension lies a fundamental question. When your identity becomes a performance, can it still be authentic? Imagine for a moment that your every decision, what to wear, what to eat, what to say, was being quietly influenced by someone you couldn't see. Someone who watched your every move, studied your every preference, and nudged you toward choices that weren't entirely your own. Now, replace that invisible person with a system, a machine. That's the power of algorithms. Algorithms are the unseen architects of our digital experiences. They decide what you see on your feed, which posts get amplified, and which voices fade into the background. But their influence goes far deeper than we often realize. These systems don't just curate our digital environments, they shape our behavior, our beliefs, and even our sense of self. Take, for example, the way content is presented to you. The algorithms behind platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook are designed to prioritize engagement. Their goal isn't to show you what's real, balanced, or meaningful. It's to keep you scrolling. To do that, they analyze your behavior, the posts you like, the videos you watch, the comments you leave. They learn what grabs your attention, then feed you more of it. But here's where it gets tricky. By personalizing your experience, algorithms create a feedback loop. They show you content that aligns with your preferences, which reinforces your existing beliefs and behaviors. Over time, this loop doesn't just reflect who you are, it starts to shape who you become. Let's break this down with an example. Say you're someone who loves fitness content. You follow a few influencers, watch a couple of workout videos, and like some posts about healthy eating. The algorithm notices this and starts flooding your feed with similar content. At first, it feels great. It's inspiring, motivating. But over time, the constant exposure to curated, idealized versions of fitness can start to affect how you see yourself. You might feel inadequate, even though the content is supposed to inspire you. This isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. Algorithms are designed to amplify what generates engagement, even if it creates pressure, comparison, or insecurity. They don't care about your mental health, they care about keeping you online. But the impact of algorithms doesn't stop at the individual level. They also shape entire communities and cultures. By prioritizing content that's clickable and shareable, they tend to amplify extreme, emotionally charged posts. Anger, outrage, and controversy get attention, so they're rewarded. This creates what's often called an echo chamber, a digital space where your views and values are constantly reinforced, while opposing perspectives are filtered out. In these echo chambers, it's easy to feel certain about who you are and what you believe. But that certainty can come at a cost. The more you're exposed to content that aligns with your existing identity, the less likely you are to question it. Over time, your sense of self becomes less about discovery and growth, and more about repetition and reinforcement. And here's the unsettling part. Most of us aren't even aware of how deeply we're being influenced. Algorithms operate behind the scenes, quietly nudging us in directions we don't always notice. They don't announce themselves or explain their logic. They simply present a curated version of reality that feels natural, even inevitable. This leads to what some researchers call algorithmic identity shaping. Imagine a teenager on TikTok who posts a funny dance video. It goes viral, gaining millions of likes and comments. The algorithm takes note and starts promoting more of their content. The teenager, thrilled by the attention, begins posting similar videos, leaning into this new identity as a dancer or comedian. Over time, they might feel boxed in, trapped in a persona they didn't fully choose, but one that the platform rewarded. This phenomenon raises important questions about agency and control. If algorithms are constantly nudging us towards certain behaviors, can we still say we're in charge of our own choices? And if the personas we present online are shaped as much by these systems as by our own decisions, how authentic can they really be? It's also important to consider the societal implications. By amplifying specific types of content, algorithms can shape cultural norms and values. Take beauty standards, for instance. Platforms that promote highly edited, filtered images contribute to a narrow definition of what's considered attractive. These standards don't just affect individuals, they influence entire industries, from fashion to advertising. And then there's the issue of misinformation. Algorithms don't prioritize accuracy, they prioritize engagement. This means that sensationalized or polarizing content often gets more visibility than nuanced or factual information. The result is a fragmented digital landscape where truth becomes harder to discern. So what can we do? How do we navigate a world where algorithms have so much control over our experiences and identities? One approach is awareness. Understanding how these systems work can help us make more intentional choices about how we engage with them. For example, diversifying the content you consume, following accounts that challenge your perspectives or expose you to new ideas, can help break the feedback loop. Another approach is advocacy. Pushing for greater transparency from tech companies about how their algorithms work is essential. If these systems are shaping our identities and societies, we have a right to understand how they operate. Ultimately, the challenge is finding ways to reclaim agency in a digital world that often feels beyond our control. Because at the heart of this issue is a fundamental question. If algorithms are shaping our beliefs, behaviors, and identities, who are we when we step outside their reach? For many of us, life feels like it's being split into two distinct realities. On one side, there's the offline world, the unscripted, imperfect, and deeply personal version of our lives. On the other, there's the online world, a curated highlight reel, polished for approval and shaped by the ever-watchful eye of algorithms. But what happens when the gap between these two selves becomes too wide? When the person we are online starts to feel more real, more significant than the person we are offline. This tension isn't just a feeling, it's a reality for millions. Over 50% of Gen Z report feeling like they're living double lives. Their digital selves, the ones built on filters, captions, and algorithms, often feel more authentic, more validated than the messy, unfiltered realities of their offline lives. At first glance, this duality might seem harmless. After all, humans have always adapted their behavior based on context. We act differently at work than we do with friends, and that's normal. But in the digital age, this natural adaptability has been magnified and accelerated. The personas we create online don't just reflect who we are, they start to define who we are. Consider this. When was the last time you posted something truly unfiltered? Something that didn't fit neatly into your digital narrative? For many of us, the answer is rarely or never. The pressure to maintain a cohesive online identity can be so strong that we end up filtering not just our photos, but our emotions, opinions, and experiences. And this doesn't just affect what we share, it affects how we see ourselves. Over time, the persona we present online starts to feel more important than the person behind the screen. We become invested in the character we've created, even if it doesn't align with our true selves. Psychologists refer to this as identity dissonance, the discomfort that arises when there's a gap between our online and offline selves. This dissonance can manifest in subtle ways, feeling anxious when a post doesn't perform well, obsessing over how we're perceived by others, or struggling to reconcile our curated online image with our real-world experiences. But the consequences of this duality go beyond personal discomfort. They affect how we connect with others, how we experience the world, and how we define success and happiness. Take relationships, for example. When we're constantly performing for an audience, it becomes harder to be vulnerable, honest, and present in our interactions. We might find ourselves prioritizing the validation of strangers over the connection with the people closest to us. This isn't just a shift in behavior, it's a shift in values, one that prioritizes visibility over intimacy. And then there's the impact on self-worth. When your sense of identity is tied to your online persona, your self-esteem becomes dependent on external validation. A single poorly performing post can feel like a personal failure, shaking your confidence and self-image. For younger generations, who have grown up navigating these dual identities, the stakes are even higher. Adolescents and young adults are still in the process of forming their sense of self, and the pressure to reconcile their online and offline personas can feel overwhelming. A study of social media users found that nearly 60% of teens report feeling disconnected from their real-world identity because of the persona they've built online. But this duality isn't entirely negative. For some, it provides an opportunity for self-expression and exploration. Online spaces can be liberating, allowing individuals to experiment with aspects of their identity they might suppress in the real world. A teenager struggling with their sexuality might find support and understanding in a digital community. An introvert might use social media to share their art or ideas with an audience they wouldn't reach otherwise. In these cases, the online persona isn't a mask, it's a tool for self-discovery. But even then, the challenge lies in finding balance. How do we embrace the opportunities of the digital world without losing touch with the realities of the physical one? Because the more we invest in our online personas, the harder it becomes to reconcile them with our offline selves. The pressure to perform, curate, and maintain a digital identity can feel all-consuming, leaving little room for the messy, unfiltered realities of life. So, where does this leave us? In a world where technology blurs the line between online and offline, the question isn't just who we are, but who we want to be. Are we in control of the personas we create, or are they in control of us? And as the gap between our digital and physical selves continues to grow, can we ever truly reconcile the two? Because at the end of the day, the most important identity we cultivate isn't the one shaped by algorithms or metrics. It's the one that exists when the screens are off. At first glance, social media seems like a playground, a place to share your life, connect with friends, and discover new ideas. But beneath its colorful surface lies a deeper, more unsettling truth. The platforms we use every day aren't just tools for connection, they're shaping how we see ourselves, and the effects can be devastating. One of the most significant ways social media influences us is through its design. Every notification, like, comment, and share is carefully crafted to deliver a burst of validation, a psychological reward that makes us feel seen and valued. But here's the twist. These rewards are inconsistent. Some posts blow up with engagement, while others are met with silence. This unpredictability, known as variable reinforcement, is the same principle that makes gambling addictive. Over time, this creates a cycle of dependency. We start chasing those moments of validation, measuring our self-worth by the reactions we receive online. Studies show that nearly 70% of young adults feel their self-esteem is directly tied to how they're perceived on social media. But how much of this perception is genuine, and how much is shaped by the algorithms deciding what gets attention? The result is a fragile sense of self, one that's constantly seeking external approval. A single poorly received post can feel like a personal failure, shaking your confidence and self-image. For adolescents, who are still forming their identities, this can be especially damaging. Imagine being a teenager in this environment. You share a photo that doesn't get as many likes as your friend's posts. You delete it, wondering what you did wrong. You spend hours analyzing your feed, trying to understand what went wrong and how you can fix it. This isn't just a hypothetical scenario. It's a daily reality for millions of young people. And the pressure doesn't stop at self-presentation. Social media has also turned comparison into a constant. Every scroll through your feed exposes you to a curated world of perfection. Perfect bodies, perfect vacations, perfect lives. But here's the catch. Those lives are just as curated as your own. Everyone is playing the same game, editing their reality to fit the platform's standards. Even so, the comparisons feel real. You start measuring your own worth against an impossible standard, and no matter how hard you try, it always feels like you're falling short. This is what psychologists call upward social comparison, and it's a key driver of anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. A report by the Royal Society for Public Health found that platforms like Instagram and Snapchat are particularly harmful to mental health, with users reporting increased levels of anxiety, loneliness, and body dissatisfaction. For some, these effects are manageable. For others, they can be life-altering. Consider this. Teenagers who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media are twice as likely to report symptoms of depression compared to their peers who use it less. And it's not just teens. Adults too report feeling disconnected, inadequate, and overwhelmed by the constant pressure to keep up. But why does this happen? Part of the answer lies in the design of social media itself. These platforms thrive on engagement, and engagement thrives on emotional intensity. Content that evokes strong reactions, whether it's envy, outrage, or admiration, gets prioritized. This creates an environment where the most extreme, polished, or dramatic versions of reality are constantly amplified. And yet, for all its challenges, social media isn't inherently harmful. For many, it's a lifeline, a space to find community, share struggles, and seek support. Movements like #mental-health-awareness and #body-positivity have used social media to challenge stigma, promote self-acceptance, and connect people who might otherwise feel isolated. The problem arises when the platform's design clashes with its potential for good. Algorithms prioritize what's engaging, not what's uplifting. The result is a space that offers connection and support, but also fosters comparison, competition, and insecurity. So, how do we navigate this? How do we use social media as a tool for self-expression without letting it erode our self-worth? One solution lies in self-awareness. Recognizing the ways these platforms influence our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors can help us take back control. For example, setting boundaries, like limiting screen time or turning off notifications, can reduce the constant pressure to perform and compare. Another solution is collective action. Pushing for more ethical design practices, like reducing the emphasis on metrics or creating tools to promote mental health, could make these platforms safer and more supportive. But the most important step is redefining what success and self-worth mean in a digital age. Instead of measuring our value by likes, followers, or comments, we can focus on the things that truly matter: our relationships, our passions, and our personal growth. Because at the end of the day, the person you are isn't defined by the photos you post or the metrics you chase. It's the person you see in the mirror, the one who exists when the screens are off, when the filters are gone, and when the pressure to perform fades away. If technology is shaping our identities, then algorithms are the unseen architects. These silent systems influence what we see, how we engage, and even how we think. But their true power lies in their ability to create a world that feels tailored to us, while quietly narrowing our perspective. At their core, algorithms are designed to maximize engagement. Their goal is simple: keep you scrolling, clicking, and interacting for as long as possible. To achieve this, they curate your feed based on your behavior, what you like, comment on, and share. On the surface, this seems helpful. After all, who doesn't want a personalized experience? But personalization comes at a cost. By prioritizing content that aligns with your preferences, algorithms create a feedback loop that reinforces your existing beliefs and behaviors. The more you engage with a particular type of content, the more of it you see. Over time, this creates what's often called an echo chamber, a digital bubble, where your views are constantly reflected back to you, while opposing ideas are filtered out. Think about this in the context of identity. If the content you see is always validating your existing self, it feels comforting, like the world is telling you, this is who you are, and it's okay. But this validation comes with a hidden danger. It limits your ability to explore, question, and evolve. Instead of discovering new facets of your identity, you're locked into a version of yourself that the algorithm rewards. Take, for example, the way beauty standards are amplified on social media. Platforms prioritize content that gets attention, and in the world of beauty, that often means highly edited, filtered, and idealized images. The more you interact with this content, the more it dominates your feed. Over time, these standards don't just shape what you see, they shape how you see yourself. But the impact of echo chambers isn't limited to personal identity. They also affect how we see the world and our place in it. By showing us content that aligns with our existing beliefs, algorithms can reinforce biases, deepen divisions, and polarize communities. Consider how this plays out in political discourse. A user who engages with one-sided political content will quickly find their feed filled with similar posts, articles, and videos. This creates a sense of certainty, where opposing viewpoints feel not just different, but threatening or even illegitimate. Over time, these echo chambers don't just shape opinions, they shape identities, dividing people into increasingly rigid categories. This phenomenon raises an important question. If the version of reality we see online is curated by algorithms, how much of it is real? And if our sense of self is shaped by this curated reality, how much of us is truly authentic? It's also worth noting that algorithms don't just shape what we consume, they influence what we create. Imagine you're a content creator. You post something that resonates with your audience and gets a lot of engagement. Encouraged by the response, you start posting more of the same. Over time, your content becomes less about expressing yourself and more about catering to the algorithm. This dynamic creates a kind of algorithmic identity shaping, where the personas we present online are molded as much by the platform's goals as by our own choices. And this isn't limited to creators. For everyday users, the pursuit of likes, shares, and followers often leads to similar behavior. But here's the paradox. While algorithms reinforce our existing identities, they also fragment them. By isolating us in echo chambers, they create a version of reality that's deeply personal, but disconnected from the broader world. This fragmentation can leave us feeling both validated and isolated, certain in our beliefs, but disconnected from those who see the world differently. So, what can we do to push back against this influence? The first step is awareness. Understanding how algorithms work and how they shape our experiences can help us navigate the digital world more intentionally. Diversifying your feed, following accounts that challenge your perspectives, and seeking out content from outside your comfort zone are small but powerful ways to break the cycle of the echo chamber. Another step is advocacy. Tech companies have a responsibility to design systems that promote exploration and diversity, rather than simply reinforcing what's popular or engaging. Pushing for transparency, demanding to know how these algorithms operate, is essential. But the most profound step is reclaiming control over your identity. Algorithms might shape what you see, but they don't define who you are. By stepping outside the bubble, by engaging with the world beyond your feed, you can rediscover the parts of yourself that exist beyond the algorithm's reach. Because at the end of the day, the digital world isn't the whole world, and your identity is more than the sum of your likes, shares, and comments. In the digital age, your identity is no longer just who you are, it's what you own. Your photos, usernames, online accounts, and even the way you interact on the web have become assets in a world increasingly dominated by data. But what happens when these pieces of you are stolen, replicated, or manipulated? Identity theft used to mean stolen credit card numbers or fraudulent bank accounts. But today, it's far more personal. In a hyper-connected world, your digital persona, the version of you that exists online, is just as valuable as your financial information. And the consequences of losing control over this digital self can be profound. Let's start with catfishing, a term that's become all too common. This happens when someone creates a fake online profile using someone else's photos, name, or personal information. At first glance, it might seem like a niche problem, often linked to online dating scams. But the implications are far-reaching. Imagine waking up to discover that someone has been using your identity to deceive others. They've built relationships, manipulated people, or even committed fraud, all while pretending to be you. For the victim, this isn't just a violation of privacy, it's a violation of identity. And the scale of this issue is staggering. In 2023, there were thousands of reports of identity theft linked to social media platforms. These platforms, designed to make sharing effortless, often leave users exposed. A single public post, containing a photo, a name, or a location, can provide enough information for bad actors to create a convincing fake profile. But catfishing is just the tip of the iceberg. Advances in deepfake technology have introduced new and unsettling dimensions to digital impersonation. Deepfakes are AI-generated videos or audio clips that make it appear as though someone is saying or doing things they never actually did. While this technology has legitimate uses in entertainment and education, it's increasingly being weaponized. Imagine seeing a video of yourself or someone you know saying something offensive, illegal, or completely out of character. The psychological impact of this kind of impersonation is profound. It forces us to question the very concept of truth. If a video can no longer be trusted as evidence, what can? The rise of deepfakes doesn't just affect individuals, it undermines trust in society. Politicians, public figures, and even private citizens have been targeted by deepfake campaigns designed to spread misinformation or damage reputations. And as this technology becomes more accessible, its potential for misuse continues to grow. But it's not just about impersonation, it's also about control. When your identity is reduced to data, it becomes vulnerable in ways that are hard to comprehend. Biometric systems, like facial recognition and fingerprint scanning, promise greater security, but they also raise unsettling questions. What happens when your most personal identifiers, your face, voice, or movements, are stored in systems you don't control? The permanence of the digital world complicates things further. Unlike in the physical world, where moments fade and memories evolve, everything you share online becomes part of a lasting record. Your digital footprint doesn't age, it accumulates, and once it's out there, it's nearly impossible to take back. For victims of identity theft, this permanence can feel like a trap. Even after reclaiming their accounts or proving their innocence, the effects of impersonation linger. Relationships can be damaged, reputations tarnished, and trust eroded. But there's hope. Emerging technologies, like blockchain-based identity systems, offer the potential for greater control and security. By creating decentralized and tamper-proof methods of verifying identity, blockchain could help users protect their digital selves from theft and manipulation. However, these solutions are still in their infancy, and ensuring they're accessible, ethical, and effective is a significant challenge. In the meantime, protecting your digital identity starts with awareness. Simple steps, like enabling two-factor authentication, using strong passwords, and being cautious about what you share online, can go a long way. Educating yourself about the risks and staying informed about evolving threats is equally important. But individual actions can only do so much. Social media platforms and tech companies must take greater responsibility for safeguarding their users. This means investing in better security measures, developing tools to detect and prevent impersonation, and being transparent about how user data is stored and shared. And policymakers have a role to play as well. Governments need to create legal frameworks that protect individuals while holding perpetrators accountable. Ultimately, the rise of identity theft and impersonation forces us to confront a larger question. What does it mean to own your identity in a digital world? If your sense of self can be stolen, fabricated, or manipulated with such ease, how do you maintain control over who you are? Because in a world where your identity can be copied, the most important challenge isn't just protecting it, it's reclaiming it. Culture has always been a reflection of who we are, a living, breathing tapestry shaped by our traditions, creativity, and shared experiences. But in the age of technology, that process has changed. Today, culture feels less like something we create, and more like something being created for us. And that begs a critical question. Who's really in control? At first glance, the digital age seems like a cultural renaissance. Social media has broken down borders, allowing ideas to spread faster than ever before. A dance trend on TikTok can unite millions across continents. A hashtag can spark a global movement. But as empowering as this sounds, there's a deeper, more unsettling truth beneath the surface. The technology driving this connectivity isn't neutral. It decides what's seen, what's amplified, and ultimately what's valued. Take a moment to think about your feed. What you see isn't random. It's curated by algorithms designed to maximize engagement. The content that performs well isn't necessarily the most creative, authentic, or meaningful. It's the content that aligns with what the platform values: clicks, shares, and time spent scrolling. This gives technology an unprecedented role, not just in distributing culture, but in shaping it. Consider beauty standards. Filters, editing tools, and algorithmically amplified trends have created a homogenized aesthetic. Smooth skin, sharp jawlines, and perfectly symmetrical features dominate our feeds. But who decided this was the ideal? Is it a reflection of cultural values, or the result of what algorithms found to generate the most attention? The result is a cycle where we conform to what the platform promotes, and the platform promotes what we conform to. Over time, the boundary between personal expression and technological influence blurs. Are you choosing to follow a trend because it speaks to you, or because it's what the algorithm showed you over and over again? This dynamic doesn't stop at beauty. Music, fashion, humor, even language itself are shaped by what thrives online. The memes we share, the slang we adopt, the songs that become hits, they're not just reflections of cultural preferences. They're also reflections of algorithmic decisions about what deserves visibility. This raises a critical question. Are we still the creators of our culture, or have we become its consumers, following paths laid out for us by invisible systems? The impact goes deeper when we think about community. Traditionally, communities were built on shared values, experiences, and physical spaces. Today, they're often virtual, connected by hashtags and algorithms. This shift has created new opportunities for connection, especially for marginalized groups who've used digital platforms to find their voices and challenge stereotypes. Movements like #MeToo and #Black Lives Matter have shown how technology can amplify voices and drive real-world change. But even in these moments of empowerment, the question of control looms large. These movements succeeded, in part, because they resonated with what the platform valued: virality and engagement. But what happens to the causes that don't fit the algorithmic mold? What voices are being silenced because they don't generate enough clicks? And then there's the issue of echo chambers. Algorithms, designed to prioritize engagement, feed us content that aligns with our existing beliefs and preferences. While this creates a sense of validation, it also isolates us from opposing perspectives. Over time, these bubbles reinforce our biases and make it harder to connect with people who see the world differently. This fragmentation isn't just a cultural problem, it's a question of agency. When the content you see is dictated by algorithms, how much of your worldview is truly your own? Are your beliefs shaped by personal reflection, or by the information you've been fed? Generational divides add another layer to this struggle. Younger generations, who've grown up with social media, often see their online identities as inseparable from their real-world selves. For them, culture is fluid, constantly evolving within the digital space. Older generations, meanwhile, may feel alienated, struggling to adapt to a world where identity and culture are increasingly mediated through screens. But in both cases, the question remains: who's steering the ship? Is it us, the users, making deliberate choices about what we value and share? Or is it the technology, rewarding certain behaviors, amplifying specific trends, and nudging us toward conformity? This theme of control becomes even more pressing when we consider the acceleration of cultural trends. In the past, trends evolved over years, shaped by gradual shifts in values and innovation. Today, they emerge and disappear in weeks, driven by the speed of social media. This creates a culture that feels fast, fleeting, and disposable. But who benefits from this constant churn? Certainly not the artists, creators, and communities who are trying to build something lasting. The real winners are the platforms, which thrive on our endless engagement with the new. So how do we take back control? How do we reclaim culture as something we shape, rather than something that shapes us? The first step is awareness. Understanding how these platforms influence what we see, share, and value is critical. By questioning the trends we follow and seeking out diverse perspectives, we can begin to push back against the homogenization of culture. The second step is accountability. Tech companies must take responsibility for their role in shaping culture. This means promoting diverse content, designing algorithms that prioritize meaningful engagement over superficial clicks, and being transparent about how decisions are made. Ultimately, reclaiming control isn't just about resisting the influence of algorithms, it's about redefining what culture means in a digital age. It's about asking ourselves, what kind of culture do we want to create? Because in a world where algorithms dictate so much of what we see and value, the most important question isn't just, what's next? It's, who decides? As technology continues to evolve, so does the question of identity. In this increasingly digital world, we find ourselves navigating a deeper, more unsettling tension. Who is the real you? Is it the version of yourself that exists in the physical world, unpolished and imperfect? Or is it the digital you, crafted, curated, and shaped by the tools and platforms you use? This isn't just a philosophical question. It's a battle being waged across every piece of technology you engage with, from social media algorithms to artificial intelligence to virtual reality. And at the heart of this struggle lies one defining question. Are you creating your identity, or is it being created for you? Let's consider virtual reality, VR, where you can create avatars that allow you to explore entirely new personas. In a VR world, you could become taller, stronger, more confident, anything you want to be. On the surface, this seems empowering, a chance to express parts of yourself that might feel constrained in the real world. But here's the twist. What happens when the VR version of you starts to feel more authentic than the person behind the headset? When the avatar becomes a version of yourself that you wish you could be in real life, the offline you might begin to feel inadequate. This raises an unsettling question. Is the VR self the real you, or just the you that the platform allows you to create? Then there's artificial intelligence, AI, which has already begun to blur the lines between authenticity and automation. Imagine an AI that can replicate your voice, mannerisms, and personality, a digital twin that can interact on your behalf. At first, this seems convenient. Your AI could attend meetings, respond to messages, or even maintain relationships when you're unavailable. But if this digital twin can mimic you perfectly, it forces us to confront a deeper issue. What makes you, you? Is it your presence, your choices, or something intangible that can't be replicated by code? If someone forms a relationship with your AI counterpart, are they connecting with the real you or with a programmed imitation? Deepfake technology complicates this further. With AI-generated videos and audio, anyone's identity can be fabricated in seconds. Imagine seeing a video of yourself doing something you never did, or saying something you'd never say. The emotional impact is devastating. It forces us to question not only the authenticity of media, but the authenticity of our own identity. If a machine can convincingly replicate you, how do you prove who the real you is? Even biometric systems, like facial recognition, challenge the idea of authenticity. Your face, voice, and even your movements are becoming data points in systems you don't control. These identifiers are meant to make you unique, but when stored in centralized databases, they become assets owned by someone else. If your physical traits can be used without your consent, what does that mean for your sense of self? In this world of advancing technology, the question of authenticity becomes harder to answer. Is the real you the one making decisions, or the one shaped by an algorithm? Is it the one performing for validation, or the one who exists when no one's watching? The struggle between these identities is particularly evident in the permanence of the digital world. A single post shared years ago can re-emerge and redefine how others perceive you. The digital you doesn't evolve naturally. It accumulates, creating a version of yourself frozen in time. For some, this feels like a legacy. For others, it's a prison. But perhaps the most profound challenge is the way technology forces us to confront our own duality. On one hand, the digital world allows us to create versions of ourselves that feel aspirational, braver, smarter, or more creative. On the other hand, these tools often amplify the parts of us that align with the algorithm's values rather than our own. So, who is the real you? Is it the physical self, shaped by family, friends, and experiences? Or is it the digital self, curated and celebrated by an online audience? The answer isn't simple, and perhaps it never will be. But it starts with a willingness to reflect on how we use these tools and how they use us. If VR, AI, and algorithms amplify certain parts of our identity while suppressing others, are we really in control of the self we're projecting? Or are we letting technology decide which version of us thrives? The future of digital identity isn't just about technological possibilities, it's about making choices. If we allow these tools to define us, we risk losing touch with the parts of ourselves that can't be measured, curated, or replicated. But if we approach technology with intention, we can use it to explore, express, and even enhance who we are, without losing sight of our authenticity. Because at the end of the day, the real you isn't the one chasing likes, adapting to trends, or performing for an algorithm. It's the you that exists when the screens are off. And as we navigate this digital frontier, the ultimate question isn't just, what can we become? It's, who do we choose to be? Who are you really? It's a question we've been asking throughout this journey. Is the real you the person who exists offline, messy, imperfect, unfiltered? Or is it the digital you, polished, curated, and celebrated by algorithms and followers? And in a world where technology shapes so much of how we present ourselves, how do we even begin to tell the difference? The truth is, the line between these identities is blurring. Every like, every post, every algorithmic nudge pulls us further into a world where the digital and physical selves are intertwined. And while technology offers extraordinary tools for self-expression, it also raises difficult questions about control, authenticity, and the true essence of identity. Think back to the personas you've created online. Are they reflections of who you are, or projections of who you want to be? Are they empowering, allowing you to explore and express parts of yourself, or are they performances shaped by the invisible hand of algorithms? The challenge of living in a digital age isn't just about managing our online presence, it's about reconciling it with our offline reality. It's about finding balance between the person we want the world to see and the person we are when no one's looking. And this balance matters, because when we lose sight of the real us, we risk becoming fragmented, defined not by our values, but by the systems and metrics we engage with. But here's the good news. The real you is still yours to define. It's not the avatar you create in virtual reality, or the AI that mimics your personality. It's not the curated feed you share with the world. The real you is the person behind all of that, the one who feels, thinks, and chooses. Reclaiming this authenticity doesn't mean rejecting technology. It means using it with intention. It means asking questions about how these systems influence us and making conscious choices about how we engage with them. It means remembering that while algorithms might amplify certain aspects of our identity, they don't get to decide who we are. So, as you reflect on your digital self, ask yourself, who am I when no one's watching? What parts of me are being shaped by technology, and what parts remain untouched? Am I creating my identity, or am I letting the tools I use create it for me? These aren't easy questions, but they're essential. Because as we navigate this digital world, the most important act of control is choosing who we want to be, on and offline. Technology doesn't have to define us. It's a tool, not a truth. And while it might shape how we express ourselves, it doesn't determine our worth. The real you, the whole unfiltered and ever-evolving you, exists beyond the metrics, beyond the algorithms, beyond the screen. And in a world where identity is increasingly curated, the greatest act of authenticity is simply being yourself. So who is the real you? That's not for technology to decide, it's for you to discover.